Gone and not coming back, I replied, pouring 2 glasses of wine. I gave him until the end of the day to pack his things, and he didn't put up a fight. The conference room buzzed with conversation as I glanced down at my phone, the screen lighting up with an incoming call from Tyler. Expecting the usual small talk, questions about the trip, or when I'd be home, I stepped into the hallway and answered. Instead, his voice came through cold and smug. "I'm divorcing you," he said, his tone carrying an almost triumphant edge. "I've already sold the apartment, so you'll need to figure out where you're going to live. Enjoy that." For a moment, I couldn't breathe. The sheer audacity of it, the complete lack of remorse, was almost laughable. My grip tightened around the phone as the weight of his words settled in. "You sold the apartment?" I asked, forcing my voice to stay steady. "Yeah," he replied with a dry laugh. "Nicole and I need the money to start our life together. She deserves better than a tiny place like that anyway." Nicole. The name stung, even though I'd suspected for months that someone else was in the picture. Tyler's late nights, sudden work trips, and the growing distance between us had all pointed to another woman. But hearing her name spoken so casually, as though I were the outsider in their story, lit a fire inside me. "Sounds good," I said evenly. There was no way I was going to let him hear me break. "My name is Amelia, and up until that phone call, I believed I'd married someone I could trust. Tyler and I had been together for 6 years. While things hadn't always been perfect, I'd believed in the foundation of our relationship. We'd worked hard to buy that apartment, a cozy 2-bedroom in the city that I'd fallen in love with the moment I saw it. To me, it wasn't just a home. It was a symbol of everything we'd built together. Or so I'd thought. Looking back, the signs had been there. Small cracks I'd chosen to ignore. Tyler's dismissive attitude when I asked about finances. His tendency to brush off my concerns with a charming smile and a quick kiss. I'd always assumed his confidence came from having everything under control. But now I realized it came from knowing he could manipulate me. The rest of the day passed in a fog. I sat through client meetings, nodding at the right moments while my mind raced. Tyler thought he'd won. He thought he could pull the rug out from under me, sell the home I'd poured so much into, and walk away unscathed. But there was one crucial detail he didn't know. The deed to the apartment had been in my name alone for months. I'd had it transferred earlier in the year when we refinanced, a move Tyler had agreed to without much thought because it lowered the interest rate. He'd never bothered to read the paperwork he signed. His carelessness was going to be his downfall. By the time I got back to my hotel room that evening, my shock had hardened into resolve. I wasn't going to cry or plead. If Tyler wanted a fight, he was going to get one, and I was going to win. The first call I made was to Chloe, my lawyer and a longtime friend. Calmly, I explained the situation in full detail, even as my pulse raced. "He sold the apartment?" Chloe repeated, incredulous. "Does he even realize he can't do that without your consent?" "Apparently not," I said, a hint of satisfaction creeping into my tone. "He thinks he's already spent the money on his new life with Nicole." Chloe let out a dry laugh. "Well, he's in for a rude awakening. The sale's invalid. You have proof of sole ownership. And if he's taken any money from the buyer, he's looking at fraud." The word fraud sent a wave of satisfaction through me. "What's our next move?" I asked. "First, we notify the buyer that the sale isn't legal," Chloe explained. "Then we draft a formal letter for Tyler, outlining the legal consequences of his actions. If he's dumb enough to try anything else, we'll take him to court." As I ended the call, an unfamiliar calm washed over me. Tyler thought he'd outsmarted me, left me powerless and scrambling to pick up the pieces. But in reality, he'd only paved the way for his own humiliation. The rest of my trip was a blur of focused work. I compartmentalized my emotions, channeling my energy into the tasks at hand. The betrayal still stung, but the thought of reclaiming my life and watching Tyler's arrogance crumble gave me a sense of purpose I hadn't felt in months. When it was time to board the plane home, I felt ready to confront Tyler, ready to dismantle the web of lies he'd spun, and most importantly, ready to begin a new chapter without him. This wasn't just about winning. It was about reclaiming control. The flight gave me hours to reflect on how things had unraveled. Tyler's audacity was staggering. He hadn't even bothered to hide his betrayal, as though I was nothing more than an obstacle in his pursuit of freedom. But instead of stewing in anger, I focused on what lay ahead. Tyler thought he had the upper hand, but he had no idea I'd been unknowingly playing the long game. As the plane touched down, I wasted no time. My first call was to Chloe. "I'm back," I said, tugging my suitcase off the luggage carousel. "What's the next step?" "We've already notified the buyer," she replied, her voice brisk and confident. They were shocked and not happy with Tyler, but they're willing to cooperate, which strengthens our case. "And Tyler?" I asked. "I sent him the formal letter this morning," Chloe said. "It outlines the illegality of the sale, your sole ownership, and the potential fraud charges. He hasn't responded yet, but my guess? He's furious." "Good," I thought, a flicker of satisfaction rising in me. "Let him stew." When I walked into the apartment, it felt eerily quiet. Tyler's things were still scattered around, his jacket slung over the chair, his shoes by the door, but the energy had shifted. I set my suitcase down and took a deep breath, knowing the confrontation was inevitable. Sure enough, Tyler came storming in that evening, his face flushed with anger and his phone clenched tightly in his hand. "What the hell is this?" he barked, waving the letter Chloe had sent. "You're telling me I can't sell the apartment? It's half mine." "No, Tyler," I said, my voice calm as I crossed my arms. "It's not. The deed has been in my name for months. You can't sell what you don't own." He froze, his expression shifting between confusion and fury. "What are you talking about?" I grabbed the deed from the file I'd prepared earlier and held it up for him to see. "After we refinanced, I had the deed transferred to my name. You signed the paperwork, remember? Or did you just skim it like you always do?" For a moment, he said nothing. Then his face twisted into a sneer. "You think you're so clever, don't you? This doesn't change anything. I've already made the deal, and you'll look like a fool when it all falls apart." I didn't flinch. "The sale is already void, Tyler. The buyer knows it, and they're ready to take legal action if you don't return the money." I took a step closer, lowering my voice. "Oh, and if you spend even a cent of that deposit, you're in even bigger trouble." For the first time, I saw his confidence waver. "You don't know what you're talking about," he muttered, avoiding my gaze. "Oh, I know exactly what I'm talking about," I replied, my voice steady and unwavering. "You've spent years treating me like I was too naive to notice what you were doing. But not anymore. But guess what, Tyler? I've been paying attention, and now you're going to face the consequences." He started pacing, his frustration clearly mounting. "This is ridiculous. You're blowing everything out of proportion. You can't just kick me out of here." I raised an eyebrow. "Actually, I can. This apartment is legally mine. You can stay for now, but only because I'm giving you the courtesy of time to figure out your next move. But let me be clear, I'm not going anywhere." In the days that followed, Tyler's anger turned into desperation. He called me constantly, leaving voicemails that swung between pleading and threats. Meanwhile, Chloe was working tirelessly behind the scenes to ensure that every loose end was tied up. The buyer rescinded their agreement, furious with Tyler for wasting their time and money, and Chloe had already started drafting the paperwork for our divorce. "You're in a strong position, Amelia," she told me during one of our meetings. "Tyler has no leverage here. Between the voided sale and the potential fraud charges, he's going to have to cooperate if he wants to avoid an even bigger mess." Her words were reassuring, but they also served as a reminder of just how much I'd allowed Tyler to control my life. For years, I'd tolerated his arrogance and dismissive behavior, convincing myself it wasn't worth the fight. Now, I saw just how much I'd compromised, and I was determined to take it all back. One evening, my best friend Laura came over to help me reorganize the apartment. Together, we boxed up Tyler's belongings and neatly stacked them in the corner of the living room. "How's he handling all this?" she asked, holding up one of his garish ties with a smirk. "Not well," I replied, laughing in spite of myself. "He still thinks he can talk his way out of it, but I'm not budging." "Good," she said, tossing the tie into the box. "He doesn't deserve a single inch of your space or your time." I nodded, feeling a wave of gratitude for her support. For so long, I'd felt isolated in my marriage, bearing the emotional and financial burden while Tyler took credit for everything. Now, I wasn't alone. I had people in my corner, and it made all the difference. The final piece of my plan fell into place the day Tyler brought Nicole to the apartment. I was seated at the dining table, reviewing paperwork, when the two of them waltzed in like they owned the place. Nicole surveyed the apartment with a smug smile, her arm looped through Tyler's. "So, this is where we're staying?" she asked, her tone dripping with entitlement. I stood up, my heart pounding, but my resolve steady. "No," I said firmly. "This is where Tyler was staying. You, Nicole, won't be staying here at all." Her smile faltered, and she shot Tyler a questioning glance. He looked equally stunned. "What is this?" he demanded. "This," I said, motioning around the apartment, "is my home. Not yours, not hers, and it's definitely not a hotel for you to shack up in after stabbing me in the back." Nicole's expression turned cold, but she remained silent. Tyler, on the other hand, looked as though he was about to explode. "You can't do this," he shouted, his voice shaking with frustration. "You're being unreasonable." I met his glare, unflinching. "No, Tyler. What's unreasonable is thinking you could sell my home, pocket the money, and expect me to just roll over. You're lucky I haven't pressed criminal charges yet." Tyler stood frozen in the doorway, his face flushed with anger, while Nicole crossed her arms and shifted uncomfortably. "You're being ridiculous, Amelia," he said, his tone turning desperate. "You can't just kick me out of my own home." I took a step forward, my voice calm but resolute. "This is my home, Tyler. The deed has been in my name for months, and you know it. You signed the paperwork without even bothering to read it, just like you always do. So no, this isn't your home anymore." Nicole's eyes darted to Tyler, her perfectly manicured hand tightening around the strap of her purse. "Wait, what is she talking about?" she asked sharply. "You said this was your apartment, that you sold it." Tyler flinched, waving her off. "It's complicated. I'll handle it." "Oh, it's not complicated," I said, stepping closer. "You tried to sell an apartment that doesn't belong to you. That sale is void, Tyler. And as of now, you don't have a leg to stand on." Nicole's confident facade cracked. "You mean the money you said you had?" she asked, her voice rising. "Oh my God. Did you lie about that too?" "Nicole, let me explain," Tyler said quickly, holding up his hands in a desperate attempt to calm her down. But I wasn't going to let him twist the narrative. "No, let me explain," I said, cutting him off. "Tyler tried to sell the apartment behind my back, thinking he could pocket the money and leave me with nothing. What he didn't realize was that I had the deed transferred to my name months ago. So not only did he fail to sell it, but he also committed fraud by pretending he could." Nicole's mouth opened and closed as though she was struggling to find words. "Fraud," she whispered, taking a step back from him. "Are you serious?" "Yes, fraud," I confirmed, crossing my arms. "And I'm more than prepared to press charges if he doesn't get his things and leave by the end of the day." For the first time, Tyler's composure cracked. "You can't do this, Amelia," he said, his voice pleading. "We've been together for 6 years. You can't just throw me out." I fixed him with an unwavering gaze. "You threw me out the moment you made that phone call," I said, my voice hardening. "You told me you were divorcing me and laughed about me having to find a new place to live. You didn't just betray me, Tyler. You tried to destroy me. So don't stand there and act like the victim." Nicole shifted uncomfortably, her eyes darting between the two of us. "This is insane," she muttered, clutching her purse tightly. "You didn't tell me any of this, Tyler. You said you had everything handled." Tyler turned to her, desperation etched into every feature. "Nicole, I can fix this. I just need—" "Don't," she interrupted, raising a hand to stop him. "Just don't. I'm not getting dragged into your mess." Without another word, she spun on her heel and stormed out, slamming the door behind her. I couldn't suppress the small smile that tugged at my lips as the sound echoed through the apartment. "Looks like you're on your own," I said, turning back to Tyler. "Now let's talk about what happens next." He slumped onto the couch, burying his face in his hands. "Amelia, please," he murmured. "I screwed up, I know that. But you don't have to do this." "You're right," I said, grabbing a folder from the kitchen counter and setting it firmly on the coffee table in front of him. "I don't have to do this, but I'm going to. This is the divorce paperwork. My lawyer's already drafted it, and I suggest you sign it quickly. The sooner you do, the sooner we can both move on." He stared at the folder, his face pale and expression unreadable. "You really hate me that much?" "Hate you?" I let out a bitter laugh. "No, Tyler, I don't hate you. I pity you. You had everything. Someone who loved you, a home we built together, and you threw it all away because you couldn't see past your own ego." I stood, my heart racing, but my determination unshaken. "I want you out of here by the end of the day. Take your things and figure out where you're going to stay. This is the last bit of grace you're getting from me." Tyler opened his mouth to argue but stopped short, his shoulders sagging under the weight of defeat. "Fine," he muttered. "I'll go." "Good," I said, walking toward the door. "And don't even think about trying anything else. Chloe's already handling everything. And if you cross another line, I won't hesitate to let the courts deal with you." I held the door open as Tyler stood, grabbed his coat, and walked out without looking back. His footsteps were slow and heavy, the sound of a man realizing he had lost everything. For a brief moment, I felt a pang of sadness. Not for him, but for the life we could have had if he had been the man I once believed he was. But the feeling passed quickly, replaced by a profound sense of relief. I closed the door behind him, locking it with the new key I'd had made. This was my home now. No one, least of all Tyler, would take it from me again. The silence that followed his departure was deafening. For the first time in years, the apartment felt light, free from the weight of his entitlement and lies. It was just me, the home I'd fought to reclaim, and the quiet realization that I had won. Not just against Tyler, but against the doubts that had kept me from standing up for myself. I stood in the middle of the living room, taking in the space. His oversized gaming chair, the clutter of framed jerseys, the gaudy coffee table he'd insisted on keeping. They were all gone. The apartment felt brighter, cleaner, like it was truly mine again. That evening, Lauren came over with takeout and a bottle of wine. "Is he really gone?" she asked, collapsing onto the couch with a dramatic sigh. "Gone and not coming back," I replied, pouring 2 glasses of wine. I gave him until the end of the day to pack his things, and he didn't put up a fight. Lauren raised her glass. To fresh starts and well-deserved victories. I clinked my glass against hers, a smile creeping across my face as the weight of the past week began to lift. To never letting anyone walk all over me again. In the days that followed, I began reclaiming the apartment one piece at a time. I rearranged the furniture, brought my favorite artwork into the living room, and filled the space with things that brought me joy. It wasn't just about redecorating. It was about reclaiming my identity and turning the space into a reflection of who I truly was, not the person Tyler had tried to mold me into. Chloe called with updates on the legal proceedings, her voice steady and reassuring. "The fraud charges are off the table since the buyer isn't pursuing them," she explained, "but the divorce paperwork is progressing smoothly. Once Tyler signs, you'll officially be free." Hearing the word free made my chest tighten. This wasn't just about ending the marriage. It was about shedding the resentment, self-doubt, and feelings of entrapment I'd carried for years. I was finally beginning to let it all go. Tyler reached out a few times, his messages oscillating between weak apologies and desperate attempts to guilt me into reconciliation. "I made a mistake," one message read. "Can we at least talk about this?" Another was more desperate. "You're going to ruin me, Amelia. Is that what you want?" I didn't reply. For once, I wasn't going to waste my energy trying to salvage something irreparably broken. Tyler had made his choices, and now he was facing the consequences. By the end of the week, the apartment felt completely transformed. It was warm, inviting, and unmistakably mine. Sitting on the couch with a cup of tea, the city lights twinkling outside the window, I let myself reflect on everything that had happened. Tyler's betrayal had been a shock, yes, but it had also been a turning point. For far too long, I had convinced myself that I didn't deserve better, that I had to settle for whatever scraps of respect and love Tyler decided to give. Now, I knew better. This wasn't just about reclaiming my apartment. It was about reclaiming my life. A month later, my world looked completely different. The apartment hadn't undergone any drastic renovations, but it felt like a different place. It was a space that reflected me, my tastes, my personality, my independence. Without Tyler's clutter and overbearing presence, the home felt lighter, freer. The divorce process had gone smoothly, thanks to Chloe's sharp legal work. Tyler signed the papers without much resistance, likely realizing he didn't have any leverage. There had been no dramatic confrontation, no emotional plea for reconciliation. Just a clean, cold break, bittersweet but deeply satisfying. One afternoon, while sorting through some old papers, I stumbled across a photo of Tyler and me from our early years. We were smiling, arms around each other, radiating hope and promise. I stared at it for a long moment, letting the memories wash over me. There had been good times, moments when I truly believed in the life we were building together. But those moments were long gone, overshadowed by years of neglect, manipulation, and betrayal. I slipped the photo into an envelope and tucked it away in a drawer. It wasn't something I wanted to keep on display, but I wasn't ready to throw it away either. It was a part of my past, but it no longer defined me. Lauren and I celebrated the finalization of the divorce with dinner and cocktails at a trendy rooftop bar downtown. "You're glowing," she said, raising her glass in a toast. "Single life suits you." I laughed, a warmth spreading through me that I hadn't felt in years. "It's not the single life," I said. "It's the freedom. For the first time, I don't feel like I'm living by someone else's rules." We toasted to that. And as the evening went on, I felt a deep sense of pride in myself. I had faced one of the hardest moments of my life and come out stronger. I wasn't just surviving, I was thriving. Back at home, I began making plans for the future. The apartment, once my sanctuary, had become a symbol of everything I had reclaimed. But I knew I wouldn't stay there forever. One day, I'd move to a new place, one without the lingering shadows of my life with Tyler. Until then, I was determined to savor every moment in the space I had fought so hard to keep. That night, as I curled up on the couch, a profound sense of peace washed over me. I thought about Tyler's laughter during that fateful phone call, his certainty that he'd won, and I couldn't help but smile. His arrogance had been his downfall. My quiet resilience had been my salvation. This wasn't just the end of a marriage. It was the beginning of a new chapter, one where I called the shots, one where I chose happiness on my own terms. And for the first time in a long while, I felt truly free.